The first thing that I want to say to you is that you will not be sorry that you registered and went through boot camp with Paul. Paul is astounding. He is fantastic at what he does. He inspires, he motivates, but he is also so dialed in to all of the practical concerns that you're going to need in order to become a coach. I had such a wonderful experience in boot camp. He gives us everything that we need. The whole process is so well structured. There is so much support. Paul gives out an incredible amount, and he really knows his stuff. So if you have even just the slightest inclination that this might be for you, don't wait another second. This is not a paid ad. I swear I'm a real person, not an actor, but you won't be sorry. It is a wonderful experience and you won't regret it.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Mentor Monday. Mentor Monday is your weekly microdose of encouragement, inspiration, and miracle grow on your potential as a coach. Before we jump in, let's say hello to the people who are joining me, and should have put that up here. See this right here? This is what we always love to do. We love to connect with you. So do me a huge favor. Like this post and share it. That tells YouTube and Facebook that we're doing a good job. Secondly, jump inside of the chat and let us know where you're joining us from, what you're excited about, what you feel life and momentum on. We're in week 2 of our series called Vision-Led Coach, and I hope you enjoyed last week. You know, I'm going to tell you, I'm all about this week firing you up, bringing a little bit of irritation, because irritation is going to bring out something amazing out of you. So make sure that you say hello to us. Jump inside of the chat really quick. Tell us where you're joining us from, what you're excited about. Maybe in your on your journey as a coach. Let me say hello to a few people. Diane joining us from South Carolina, excited about learning from Mentor Monday. Thank you. Brandy is joining us from Alabama. Good to see you, Brandy. Again, if you guys would, jump inside of the chat and let us know that you are here. Also, do us a huge favor, like this post and share it. What you'll find tonight, if you've never joined me on a Mentor Monday, is that I never do fluff. It's so important to me to actually make this worth your time. And I know some of you have the day off, so maybe you're wrapping up your day off. I mean, it's 5:15 over here in California, but where you are might be past dinner. You might be just wrapping up, about to curl in bed or curl up in bed or whatever. So I appreciate the fact that you're spending your time with me, your precious time with me, and I promise you that I'm not going to waste your time when it comes to that. Stacy is joining us from, see that again? Oh, there it goes. From Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. That sounds beautiful. Kimberly is joining us from Chicago. Again, if you would, say hello to us. Tell us where you are joining us from and what you're excited about. And if you have any questions or comments, keep the comments in the chat going. Also want to remind you that this weekend is boot camp weekend. For those of you who have not gotten trained and certified as a coach, you can start with us on Friday, knock all of your training out in a 3-day weekend. So we'll do Friday night, 1 session. We'll do 3 sessions on Saturday, 3 sessions on Sunday, and you're done. So I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but the link is actually inside the description of this video. Again, keep these comments rolling. Keep saying hello to me, and I guarantee you, I promise you that I will respond. Well, like I said, we are in the second week of Vision-Led Coach. And what are we talking about tonight? Well, like I said a little while ago, I am going to provide some healthy irritation for you tonight with this question. Are you tolerating or are you taking action? And you know what? Honestly, you might be doing both. You might be taking action, but you're probably going to find that there are some areas in which you are tolerating. And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to provide some healthy irritation. I want to stir you up. I want to stir you up to a better life. I want to stir you up towards the greatness that's in you. And so with that being said, we need to jump in. Let me say hello over here to friends joining us from Virginia. Thanks for joining us from all the way in Virginia. Well, we are going to jump in. So here's where I'd love to start. I'd love to start right here with this beautiful quote that's from Confucius. And Confucius says this: "We have two lives, and the second one begins when we realize we have only one life." I don't know if I can inspire you any better than that. I'm going to try. Because and as I like to do, if I use anything that anybody has created, there's this website called AES. I can't remember what it stands for, but rather than having our team recreate this, we're just using what they have. Maybe you've seen this. Some people make them and they sell them like on Etsy. Every now and then you'll see it on Instagram or something like this. And this is what's called a 90-year human life in weeks. Now, reality is I know a lot of people aren't living to 90 years. In fact, there's somebody who was close to us that lost their life in the past week that was only in their mid-30s, leaving a few children behind, which is tragic and it's heartbreaking. What's more tragic and heartbreaking to me is when we are aware of our life and we're probably living below the threshold of what we're supposed to be living. Because reality is that no one really knows how long we're going to be living on the planet. I think probably a lot of us expect to be around for a really long time. But when your head hits the pillow, even tonight, if tonight was the last thing, is there anything undone? Is there any potential that was unused in your life? Are there any regrets? Did you withhold in your life? Did you fully live into the life that you were made to live? And if you can say yes, everything was amazing, I lived and I did everything that I was supposed to do, then I think that was a life well lived, regardless of how many years you live on the planet. But if it's not, then let me give you this for consideration. This is a human life in weeks. And it's interesting because when I see some of these things, I can see really where my children are right now at various stages. And so when I look at this, this is what it looks like if you are a small child, and you're probably not thinking about that, and probably no small children watching me tonight. But when you're a small child, you're somewhere down here. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger so it's not taking up such a small portion of space. But in your first 10 years of life, you're just really getting started. So we're really not thinking it's that big of a deal, because our first 10 years of life, well, that's only 10% of our life, really, if we're on this 90-year track. But as we all know, life goes by really quickly. And so before you know it, your teenage years, which some of you can remember, some of you remember your teenage years fondly and everything else, you're pretty much done with your teenage years by that point. And for some of us, we went to trade schools, or we went to college, or we got started with that family and everything else. And you know what ends up happening is that very quickly we find that our 20s are behind us. We start having children somewhere in here and everything else. And then, well, you know what we do? We hit our 30s. 30s, in many cases are a little bit better than our 20s, because we have a little bit greater sense of ourselves and everything else. We start thinking about life a little bit more. Our kids are starting to grow up. We give a lot of our time to our kids and everything else. And then, you know what we do? We end up hitting 40s. And just for the sake of where we are right now, I'll show you where I am right now. I'm going to give you the purple in terms of where I am right now. And so this is my 50th year. I'm 49 years old, and this is where I'm at. And when you look at it like that, well, what's the reality? The reality is that half of my life is over with. It is over. And that's if I live on this 90-year plan that we have right here. That's barring nothing else happens. But what is really the average lifespan in the United States? Well, it's probably more like that. So if we're honest about it, if we're honest about where we're at least with the lifespan for the most part, for the most part, we can all pretty much say that My grandfather used to say once he got past 70, I know I'm living on borrowed time, and he made it to about 86. So this is what we got. And many of you are kind of in the same spot that I am. You know, you might be here. You know what? You might be a little bit farther down the road here, but this is what we're really talking about. We don't have a whole lot of those boxes left. And the reality is that there's a lot of things that are still happening in these boxes right here if we don't do something that were happening here. They were happening in our 40s. They were happening here. They were happening here, and they were happening here. Fear, self-doubt, insecurity. I mean, the reality is that there's just not a whole lot of time left. And, what are we doing with our life? What's making our decisions this point forward? At what point do you kind of look at life and you say, man, I've given up a lot of life to self-doubt and insecurity and what other people's opinions are and failure and risk and all of these other kinds of things. See, we all know that we would live life a little bit differently if we knew the exact day, if it was somehow right here, or even if it was right here. That if it was right here, you would live life significantly differently, right? If this is where, if you're at the same stage that I am and you found out that life ended right here, then I guarantee you right here, what's happening in those, it looks like a completely different life. The way that you show up, the way that you respect life, the way that you treat people, the way that you show up is going to be drastically different. It's interesting when you know that you don't have a whole lot of life left, or if you know that there's scarcity, the way that you treat things that you used to not treat that importantly. Like, how much time did you spend on social media today? I guarantee you that if was your story and you knew exactly where it was going to happen, I bet you probably wouldn't have been on social media today. I bet you wouldn't have binge watched stuff on Netflix this past weekend. No judgment. I'm just saying that you would show up in your life and you would treat your life really differently, and you wouldn't be tolerating the same things that you're tolerating right now. I bet you would get your relationships in order. I bet there's a lot of things that you would try that you never would have tried before. And it's all about how we regard our life and how we show up. I bet you would call that son, you would call that daughter, you would hold that grandkid a little bit differently. I bet you would show up engaged fully rather than distracted. I bet a bunch of different things that are happening in politics and everything else, you would probably push that aside because you're like, you know what? Whatever is happening with this, I only have a couple of weeks left. I only have a few months left. And so I'm not going to waste my time focusing on politics or anything else that does not have something that's going to touch future generations and actually put something in order that's going to have a ripple effect for something great. You'd be thinking about all of those things of how do you want to be remembered, all of those things. If you knew exactly how much time, then you would spend it. See, this is what we get to do in this second portion of our life. And if you haven't grabbed a hold of the second portion of your life, then I want you to realize again, you only get one chance to do this thing. But that's not going to be enough for most of us, because it's a nice little pep talk and it's a nice little speech and it's a nice little reminder tonight. But I don't expect that any of you will do anything different after you close up this video tonight. I really don't. Unfortunately, because we've got a great momentum of a life that has been tolerating things, and we don't see ourselves in the significance of the moment. That if you knew, you would grab a hold of every moment for exactly what it was, and you wouldn't settle, and you wouldn't waste your times with miscellaneous other kinds of things that don't really matter. But again, like I said, that's not enough to stir you towards a different life. So let's talk about how we could actually live a different life. Here's the first thing that I'll say, and it's a truth bomb. The life that you have right now is a direct result of the standards that you have in your life. And some of you may not know that. Some of you may actually disagree with that, but I'm going to actually prove it to you. And all of us are coaches, right? Or we're aspiring coaches. So what do we do? We help people achieve goals, don't we? It's a relationship that's going somewhere. A coaching relationship is a relationship that's going somewhere. And when we're working with someone, we're helping them achieve a goal that maybe they've always wanted, maybe that they haven't been able to achieve. But the reality is that your standards are actually more important than daily goal setting. Because the reality is that at the beginning of this year, a lot of people set goals, didn't they? They called them New Year's resolutions, and they're already over with. There was something that for some reason, it didn't bother them that they didn't finish what they started. And that's not okay. But that's because goals are actually not as important as your standards. Goals actually will not have the same kind of impact on your life that your own personal standards, your expectation in life is much more important than actually even goal setting. And here's what I mean by that. If you look at this, goal setting versus a lifetime of raising your standards really looks like this. Like if this is coaching right here, which is setting a goal, somebody might set a goal to finish college or go to college. It might be, get a promotion, you know, it might be something like have children or something like that. It might even be something like buy a house, and that's not bad stuff. But the reality is that in someone's lifetime, and again, we're talking about lifetime here, if this is someone's calling and purpose, I'll also call this potential. If this is your potential, which I believe if you live in your maximum potential, that means that you are living into the calling and purpose that you were destined for on this planet. This means full potential also means fullest of life satisfaction, fullest in every portion of your life. If that is the ultimate that is possible for all of us as human beings, the way that most human beings are actually living, if this is I just put an 80-year lifespan, this is the way that most people live their life in this goal setting kind of thing. Because somebody over here might say, get a college degree. And here's what happens. And here's what even happens when we coach people is that there's a little bit of a spike here. And you know what they do? They kind of, what they do? They end up getting their little diploma and their certificate and stuff like that. And that's great. And you know what ends up happening is that there's a downward trend after that. Because, I went out and I went and got my college degree and everything else. And then you know what you do? You kind of go in cruise control for a little while until you kind of go wrong and you're kind of like, there's something else that I want. Maybe this wasn't, I just realized that getting a college degree and getting started, maybe I want a promotion. Maybe I want some kind of a career change or whatever. And so, what ends up happening is that they set a goal for like a promotion, or maybe over here, it's to buy a house. Maybe it's getting married. Hopefully we're not getting married when we're 60, just starting out there, but maybe some people are. But the reality is that what happens is that when it comes to setting goals, what will happen is that people momentarily will make decisions and they will take action and they will achieve their goal, but then they'll suddenly fall back to really what is below their potential in most cases. And so what ends up happening is that setting a goal isn't enough to actually change your life. It just allows you to accomplish some things. How many people do you know accomplish amazing goals in their life, but their life isn't one that you would actually want to exchange your life for? Because there's some key areas in life that you're like, dude, I would want more in these particular areas in life. But the reality is that for all of us, we could probably look at this and say, yeah, I've had some key things that I've made goals, but I've noticed that there's a certain default that I fall back on. Here's the reason why. It's because our standards aren't really that high. And the fact is that if your standards do not change, you ever notice something here? When you look at this, if your standard does not change, then that means that the max in any portion of your life to coming to your potential is going to be right here. And what you'll do is that you'll live below it, you'll live up to this or whatever, but the reality is that this is going to be the lid in your life, even though this is what was actually possible for you in your life. So How do we change that, and how does standards change us? Because here's how you change it. When it comes to a standard, and I think I'm gonna grab a new color over here that kind of is matchy matchy. When it comes to setting a standard, let's imagine that right here is where your standard started. But you got a little bit older, and you know what happens is that you get a little bit older and you're like, you know what? This was the standard when I was growing up of what you could expect in terms of my and all of you have done this, by the way. You had a standard where you're like, oh well, here's what it's expected in terms of education and opportunity and everything else. This is where my parents were. But what you ended up doing is that you ended up setting a higher standard, and many of you have done this when it comes to your education and your own personal development and some of those other kinds of things. So what ends up happening is that at some point when you stepped outside yourself, you went right here and you set a new standard. And then if you do this thing right, then possibly in your 20s, you set what do? You set a new standard. And you know what happens is that with every new standard that you create, let me see if I can borrow. I can't really borrow that image. Is that what do? Is that you set a new goal based on the standard at which you go. So I set a new standard, and you know what I end up having as a result of a new standard? Result of a new standard is that I keep getting a new goal that's a little bit higher than where I was before. So that as I go along and I keep setting new standards for myself, every time I set a new standard, I've got a new goal that's a little bit higher. New standard again. What do I get? Ultimately, I keep getting new goals and I keep achieving things that I never thought was in the realm of possibility for here. See, this is how we actually come into potential, is it is the standard is more important than the goal, because the standard is going to determine whether or not you actually have a goal that's worthy of your potential, that is worthy of your calling and purpose. And this is actually how you come into destiny in your life. You see, the truth is, again, is that the life you have right now is actually a direct result of your standards. Look at the relationships that you have. Do you have a bad marriage? Do you have an okay marriage? Do you have a good marriage? Or do you have an extraordinary marriage? If you do not have an extraordinary marriage right now, that is your choice. And I'll tell you, I'm going to speak the truth tonight, because it's a place where we've settled. It's a place where we have been unwilling to confront, and you will never conquer something in your life unless you actually confront it. If you refuse to confront the scary places, the threatening places, the risky places, then you have chosen to live below your standards. See, if you're not in a relationship right now as a married person, for those of you who are married, that is absolutely intimate, where you are in love and everything else. If you're in a marriage where you're like, well, they're my best friend, I'm telling you, none of you, when you were a kid, dreamed of marrying and having a best friend. None of you, when you were children, dreamed of marrying some guy that you could just have kids with. None of you, when you were growing up, were dreaming of marrying a woman just so that you could have a house. No, you dreamed of getting married because you wanted to meet a lover, the love of your life, and all of those things would be the overflow of those things. But somewhere along the line, you settled for a lower standard than where you started. That's the truth, Mom, I want to give you. And everything else in your life, whether it's your career, your paycheck, your relationship with your children, your health, your money, your savings, whatever you like, whatever is important to you, every one of those things, you have either settled in a standard or you are living below the standards of which you started. And there's something in you right now that has made you choose to tolerate. And the only way that we live into a life that is matching our potential is to finally stop tolerating the life that we're in right now. in any of those key areas. See, I'll say this as well. Your life only starts to change when what should happen actually begins to happen because it has become a must in your life. It's the difference between, well, I would like, in a perfect world, and I'd like to daydream about this, but right now there's a lot of shoulds. You should do this with your health. You should do this with your wife. You should do this with your children. You should do this with your career. You should wake up at this time every morning. You should stay away from social media many days out of the week. You should take a break from whatever. You should quit watching the news. You should work on yourself. You should learn whatever it is. But unless that should becomes a must, it will never change your life. This is what we're talking about. The standards is when we don't sit around having shoulds, but we progressively come into the people that we were made to be, because we're not living below a standard and we're always setting new ones with everything. Now, some of you have already done these kinds of things as you went along in your life. If you go back, and we'll reverse engineer this process, but some of you did. There was a time when you were in a terrible marriage or you were in a terrible relationship, and you know what you did one day? You woke up one morning and you said, you know what? I'm not putting up with this anymore. And you made a standard. You set a new standard for how you would be treated. You set a new standard for what you would tolerate and what you would not tolerate. My mom used to always say stuff, and when she had enough, and when she finally got to her breaking point, she would say, all hell is about to break loose unless you do this thing right now. And we never got to see hell break loose, but it sounded really terrifying to me. So you know what that meant? It meant that we engaged. My mom would always have that breaking point, and she would say, no more. We're not going past this point any longer. That's what we're talking about. So if you look back in your life, all of you have done that. At times with your careers, at times with the money that you were making, with the relationships, with the friends that you cut off, family that you stepped away from, boundaries that you set. All of those things set a new standard, and it changed your life. And this is what we've got to learn again, is that to live to the next level of what's available for us means that we set new standards. I'm not saying all your standards are bad, by the way. I'm saying that it's going to require a higher standard and a higher expectation and a new responsibility and a new stewardship over your life, your gifts, your talents, your knowledge, your ability, those things that you know that you should be doing that you have been unwilling to do, the prices that you have not been willing to pay for the kind of life that you're supposed to be living. This is what we're really talking about. So let me ask you some convicting questions, because I said this last week, is that there has to be a conviction in your heart to live into the vision and the picture of that life that you're supposed to have. Here's some convicting questions for you. Where are you settling right now in your life? I want you to think about it. I don't think you've got to think about it very hard. In your career, where are you settling? What kind of a job? What kind of a career? How much of that, in your career, what's important to you in your career? What is the most important thing? And for most people, they could say, what's the most important thing in my career? What might be finances, might be. Are you making exactly the amount of money that you want to make? Are you getting paid what you are worth making? The amount that you're making right now, is it enough to take care of your family, take care of all of your responsibilities and more, and to create some security for the future? And if it is not, you are settling. I'm not trying to be harsh. Let's just talk about being real here. Let's be real and let's be authentic. If we can't say yes to those standards, then we're living below a standard. Because if you can't feed yourself, and if your job is gone tomorrow or whatever, and you're kind of stuck or whatever, and you have no future options, you haven't thought about anything, then, okay, we've got to set new standards. Again, in your relationships, think about your relationships with your children, with your spouse, or that significant other. Are you settling there? Do you have the amount of intimacy that you would expect to have, the one that you dreamed about when you were a kid, that you were going to give your life to this person? You were setting a vow and saying, I'm not going to look at anybody else because this is the man, this is the woman that I was deciding to have for the rest of my life. Do you have that right now? And I understand that it takes two, but it also takes one to actually initiate. And really, in many cases, that's all it really takes. But where are you settling? What things have you been unwilling to confront? Where are you walking on eggshells? What are you unwilling to endure? Where are you unwilling to go with regard to your family, your children? What are the things even in your own spirituality? I know I've got a lot of spiritual people who watch, on a Monday night. You know where you're settling right now. You know where you're not all in. You know where you haven't given all. You know when you talk one thing about things being so important, and you know the roller coaster ride that you're living with regard to those commitments that you make. What about your health? How many times are you going to say, I really need to get back in the gym? I really need to change my diet. I really need to take vitamins. I really need to do whatever. Enough of the shoulds. What's your standard for your health? And any other kinds of things, friends, hobbies, whatever those other kinds of things are. Here's a couple more convicting questions. Where have you previously had conviction, but you've ignored it? This is when I know that I have a standard and there's something in me that's eating me and it's calling me to more. But here's what ends up happening. For me, that's the voice of God. When I hear in my heart, Paul, you need to show up like this. You need to do this kind of a thing. And what it is that when I have a conviction that's happening in my heart, it's saying that here's what your potential is and here's what you're made for and you're living below it. But here's what ends up happening is that if you won't move with those things, it's an interesting thing that happens in your heart. If you will not move towards the things that you are convicted by and you ignore it long enough, this part of your heart actually becomes very, very hard. So if I feel a conviction that I'm supposed to do something for my wife that will build intimacy, I'm supposed to serve her in some kind of a way or whatever is required for me, and that's what's going to be the requirement to have the dream that I had when I was a kid to be in love for the rest of my life after I get married. But if I decide, no, I'm going to withhold and I'm not going to do it and I'm going to wait until that voice subsides in me, what ends up happening is that my heart gets hard to my own self. I won't respond to my own conviction in my heart, and I'll have a hard heart to my wife. And you know what ends up happening is that I do nothing. And I actually fall below my potential, and I go to an even lower base level than I was before. What are the things that you knew that you were supposed to start doing years ago with regard to your career, with regard to your relationship, your finances, or whatever? You know that there were times when you had a conviction. It's like, I really need to do this. And whatever reason, you said no. When you ignored it, you ended up creating a hard, callous place in your heart, and you need to regain your heart in that area. I'm asking convicting questions because I want it to cut away the dullness in your heart. Where have you settled, and what prices are you paying because you've been willing to settle? Because the reality is that this is costing you something to not do it. Listen, there's a price to pay to go after things in your life. I understand that. But there's a greater cost for staying where you are right now. What do I mean that there's a greater cost? Well, because there are things that you have refused to confront, there's probably someone who is losing more than you are right now. And that should eat you up. Like, really. It's one thing for me. Like, for me, I don't need anything. Like, if I settled in my life and I basically just, I made just enough day by day to get by, I could be fine. All I need is a microwave and a couch. And I can do that anywhere in the world. I don't really care. I don't have needs. I can accommodate myself. I can shrink myself down. I don't need anymore. And this is what people will say. Well, I don't need anymore. I need to just get enough to get by. Well, bull crap. That's the most selfish thing. If you want to only get yourself by and you don't care about your children, you don't care about your spouse, you don't care about your family, you don't care about the world that's counting on you to show up and be a coach, show up and live into your destiny and purpose, which is all about helping other people step into their destiny and purpose. Listen, there are people who are losing because you're settling. There's people who are losing right now because you're tolerating things in your life. So when I go to bed at night, I have to think about the people who are watching me right now. I could decide it's President's Day. No one's going to tune in because it's President's Day. I don't need to show up tonight, except that I need to show up tonight for your benefit, for our team, for all of the vendors, for all the people who count on our business, for all the people worldwide who count on us in every kind of way. But I can personalize it and say, for the family that I was entrusted with in my life, to know that they are taken care of for the next decades past my living, I show up today because I know it really matters. Because if I don't show up, I don't lose nearly as much as my children, my wife, you, the people in the world that I serve all over the world. Like globally, I feel that pressure of things. And it's not a bad pressure. I want my name to be called. You need to want your name to be called. So let me reverse engineer the process of every transformation that you've had in your life. This is the way we'll wrap it up. Every time that you've gotten change in your life, it always created a new standard by which you were living. So we can reverse engineer it for you to set a new standard. First of all, when you set a new standard in your life, it's because the pain in your life was too great to stay. You know what happens? A lot of times people end up in bad relationships and all kinds of stuff messes with their head. You know, they buy a house together, they have a dog, they have investments, they have a lot of things that as you get together in any kind of a relationship that you start sharing things and you start sharing life. And the more that you start sharing life, what ends up happening in relationships, even in friendships, even in the town that you're living in, even in your family, what happens is that there ends up being this binding in this. Well, what ends up happening is that sometimes you lose your own identity in the process. Sometimes it is just so interconnected and so stitched together with you and interwoven that it feels very painful, because you know what ends up having to happen is that you don't to let go and to move on, or to move to a different town, or to move on in a career, or any of those other things. You know what ends up happening is that this starts to happen. But what ends up happening for the people who do choose to leave, and to leave, whether it's an abusive relationship or an unsatisfying relationship or a base kind of relationship or whatever it is that there's a point at which this pain of staying is more than this pain that's going to require this right here. And this is what's happened with every transformation and new standard that you ever had in your life. Whether that meant that you were going to have to be more responsible, whether that meant that you're going to have to be more structured in your schedule, it meant that you're going to have to get up earlier in the morning, it meant you were going to have to go back to school, it meant that you were going to have to learn things, it meant that you were going to have to give up the sure thing in your life to go after an unsure thing. It means that you have to leave one relationship behind in order to go after that relationship that you know where love actually lives. And this was never the standard, and you're leaving that behind, which you don't have to work for anymore, to go out and find something new. It meant that, you know what, you're going to have hard conversations with people. It means that some people will need to be cut off and not have that place of access point in your life anymore. There's a lot of pain that's involved in doing something new, but you have to be in so much pain that you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Every change that you've ever had where you set a new standard, you're like, dude, this is too much and I got to move on. Let me tell you this. If you want to set a new standard in your life and achieve that vision in your life, you need to turn the pain threshold up. That's why I asked you convicting questions, because some of you have gotten out of touch with your heart. Listen, it's terrible to live in apathy and passivity. That's one of the worst existences ever, is to pretend like you don't want something or you can't have something. Let's get in touch with those things again, because that is the first catalyst for actually changing your life. Every transformation that you had started when your conviction about your identity called you higher. You know, it's kind of like these people who are like, you know, I'd like to quit drinking, but I couldn't imagine ever not drinking. It's been a part of my life. I'd like to quit smoking, but I'm a smoker and I've been a smoker for decades or whatever. Then it's like, you know what? It's going to be really hard to quit smoking or drinking if you think that you're a smoker or a drinker. You get that? When it's become a part of your identity, then your identity is what actually produces the actions that you do in your life. But as long as you relate to yourself as a loser or not as smart or not structured, or I have ADHD, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good at math, or I'm not pretty enough, or, I'm scared of people, I'm an introvert, I'm not good at computers, I'm not good at presentation skills, I'm not good at selling, I'm not good at writing, all of those other kinds of things. When they become a part of your identity, then it means you can't live past your identity. But every transformation that we've ever had in our life not only started with the pain that I couldn't stay here any long, but there was a conviction that says, you know what? This is where I've been living, but I know there's something in me and I've never seen it. There's something that echoes in my heart that I was made for more than the life that I'm living in right now. You've got to be convicted that there was something more that you're living here on the planet for. You got to be convicted about who you are, because your who is going to actually your who is actually going to determine what your do is in your life. That's why even with my kids, if they do something that is outside of their character, like if my kid lies to me, I'm not going to call my kid a liar. Now, I grew up in a childhood, many of you did, when you told a lie and everybody called you a liar. Liar, liar, pants on fire, all this. They had songs, they had everything, and you could never live past your mistakes. I understand them that I'm not going to put that identity and I'm not going to put that brand on my children because it's damaging. But if they do something that's outside of what my expectation of who they are, then I'm going to say, that's not who you are. This is who you are. And you're a person of integrity and you tell the truth and you never leave people astray. You have an impeccable integrity. Why would I say something like that? Because I want to call them higher towards who they really are. See, there needs to be a conviction that you are better than what you've been living. And many of you know that. You've been settling, you've been lazy. Oh, did I just say that? Yeah, I did. Some of you have been lazy. Some of you have not followed through. Some of you have not done the things. You have a whole list. You've got journals of different kinds of things that you've written about what you would do in your life. You got bullet points. You've got checkpoints. You got Tony Robbins things that you've done. You got Mel Robbins things. You got stacks of self-improvement books and everything else. You know your triggers. You know your trauma, and you haven't taken the step. Listen, that's who you really are. There needs to be a conviction and a stirring and an echo in your heart that there is something more to you. And you need to be convicted in your identity of who you actually are. As we keep moving, though, is that every transformation started when you knew you could be more than what you were right then. When you knew you were more valuable than what anybody was treating you, than any circumstance that you were in, or any situation that you found yourself in. And transformation started when you knew you were living below what was possible. I'll show you this picture again just as we're closing. I wonder if you guys could look at this thing right now. When you look at this and you're able to say, and I'm going to get a red color, this is ultimate purpose, where this crown is. And let's say that this was your starting point when you were born. I wonder what the gap is between what you were given the day that you were born and what you've done with it, what you've stewarded. I wonder how many of you would probably say, I'm probably right here. Because if this is a percentage and this is like 100% fulfillment of everything that was possible for you in your life, where would you be? Would you be at 90%? Would you be at 80%? Would you be at 70? Would you be at 60? Would you be at 50, 40, 30, 20, as low as 10? Doubtful that you're at 10. But when you look at this right here, I wonder how many of you would say, I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty close to 100%. Probably none of you. You know what? I could take a poll out of the room without even talking to you right now, and I can say this with almost 100% certainty that most of you are probably going to say you're in this range right here. This is where most of you are going to say that you're at. You're going to say, yeah, I'm about living in this place right here. And you know what that is right there? It's a place where change can happen. It's a tension between where you are and where you could be. You know what that tension is? Is that there's just enough pride in every one of you that even if I ticked some of you off a while ago and you said, you called me lazy, you called me settling in my marriage, you told me not afraid to confront things and everything else, you didn't like those things. Some of you stuck around this entire time. Appreciate that. But you know what? There's just enough pride in every one of you that even though you wouldn't say that I was right a while ago, you'd say, there's enough pride in me to know, man, I've got a lot more. There's more to me than what I am living. And see, this place right here is where tension needs to mount so that you can actually become who you were made to be. And if I brought you right here, and most of you, which I could pretty much guarantee that almost every one of you said that you lived in this 60 to 70% range, then I did my job tonight. Because this is all I wanted to show you, is that you're settling. Whatever this is right here, see that area right there? Whatever is going on, when you say potential and everything else, see that section right there that you see? It's where you're tolerating. And this might be in your marriage, it might be in your career. And here's the thing, is you don't need me to tell you what you need to do in those areas because you already know. But you need to do something. Because I'm not coming off of this thing. I'm pretty determined that who's ever around me, that we're going to open doors. I had calls today. Some things that I've put together for a whole group of people who are up and coming leaders that are 20 somethings, and that I told them, I want you to give me a week of your life. You're going to pay in your own dime in April, and we're going to do something all the way down the coast of California. Who's in? And they're like, we're in. I had calls today from different various things all the way down the coast of California, where I'm going to bring people who are unknown and do things with them all the way down. And it's like, oh, this is amazing, because I'm looking for hungry people. I'm looking for people who don't want to settle, who want to be challenged, who want to be pushed, who want to actually do the thing that's in their heart and to leave fear behind. And hopefully you're that person. And my belief is, if you're still around, well, you are that person. For those of you who have not gotten trained and certified as a coach yet, best opportunity that I could actually give you is this Jumpstart program. Jumpstart Your Coaching Practice includes life coach certification, both through our self-paced course, through our live Tuesday nights, as well as our live boot camp that is this coming weekend. Now, this costs us money to give you this program, as opposed to just asking you to sign up for boot camp, because boot camp's $247, which you can do, by the way. But if you want a business development roadmap, in addition to getting trained and certified, then Jumpstart's by far the best deal, because this program's worth really over $10,000. And if I separated all of those courses, then you would see how much they were, what the value of each of them would be. And we're giving it to you for $97 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment. This weekend, though, is boot camp weekend. It's February 23rd through the 25th. We start on Friday night and we go all day Saturday and all day Sunday. It's 7 powerful weekend sessions where we give you, starting with the foundations of coaching, the anatomy of a dynamic coaching session, how to help your clients get extraordinary results, how to listen on a transformational level, how to ask powerful questions, and how to establish a growing coaching practice. We include live coaching demos, so you will have coaching demonstrated for you, and you will also practice as a coach. We have live Q&As at the end of every one of those sessions, because we're not going to leave any stone unturned. We're going to answer any of your questions, and we're going to give you great confidence moving forward on not only how to coach, but how to start a coaching practice. Again, what's included are the 7 sessions with live Q&As and role playing. You're also going to get as bonuses, coaching tools, question samples. You're going to get the 500 coaching questions book. You're going to get the coaching tool starter pack, which are 5 powerful tools to start your client's transformation. You're also going to get brandable templates for everything inside your coaching practice, for like coaching agreements, invoices, all of those other kinds of things. Of course, you're going to get your life coach certification. You will get a certificate, and you will get replays in HD, as well as free audits for life. The cost is only $247. Now, there's a payment plan for that. If you want to just go that route and get trained and certified, more power to you. Join us this Friday. We're going to get that knocked out. If you need business development help in addition to getting trained and certified, then I'm going to recommend to go the Jumpstart route. It's 3-month minimum commitment, $97 a month. That's Starbucks every day, $3.25 a day. That's not a lot of money. Those of you who have been looking around at other coach training programs that are out there, you know they cost between $4,000 to $12,000, and they don't teach you how to get clients. So you're walking around with a brand new certificate, and no one knows the school you went to or any of those other things, and you're like, what do I do with this now? Well, we take all the guesswork out. We take you by the hand. Right now, we've got the people who are going through our Jumpstart program doing the coaching product launch blueprint. I'm literally taking them by the hand to help them not only launch their coaching practices, but also create coaching products and numerous streams of income so that they're not starving coaches. They're actually coaches who have a lot of free time and they have freedom in their schedule, and they're helping a lot of people. Again, this program is only $97 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment. The link is inside the description of this video, and you can jump over there and get enrolled in like 90 seconds. Let me say hello to a few people who are saying hello to me. There's Mary Ann from Virginia. Sandy is joining us from New Jersey. Joan joining us from Bakersfield. I was close to your area of the world yesterday, Joan. My daughter was in a gymnastics competition, and so we had to go your way. So that was hours and hours of driving to get over there, and she ended up being like number 7 overall in her division, which was pretty cool. So that was cool. Melissa is joining us from Ohio. Good to see you, Melissa. Listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Do me a huge, huge favor. Like this post and share it. Oh, and there's Bill. How's it going? Bill from Texas. Do us a huge favor. Like this post and share it. Like I said, I don't do fluffy stuff. Think about you guys all the time. I think about investing in you guys all the time, and I never want to waste anybody's time. But this was helpful for you tonight. It'll take you 1 second to like this post. It'll take you a second to share it. Even better if you jump inside of the video description and you can get enrolled in either the life coach certification course. You can go through that self-paced, or you can join us, or you can get enrolled in boot camp, which will be this weekend. We'll do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you're done with all your training. Or you can join us in Jumpstart. You can get all of the courses and all of the help that I mentioned, as well as we'll walk alongside you to help you knock out launching your coaching practice. We've got you covered, and we've been doing this for the last 10 years, and we would love to be a part of the journey with you. There's Sabrina saying hello from Virginia. Good to see you, Sabrina. So listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Sabrina said this was really good. My toes hurt. Uh-oh, I stepped on some toes. Oh, man. Well, good. Well, you're still here, so that's a very encouraging sign. Listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Have a great rest of your week, and take care.